Brought to you by Moonbeam Multimedia.
This is 16 to 1, a podcast about education, teaching, and learning.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
How have you been?
Doing well.
You were back in your classroom today.
I did.
Preparing.
Yeah.
The end is near.
It is. Only got a few weeks left.
Uh-huh. But we don't talk about that.
No.
We don't talk about that at this point in the summer.
No, I was in my classroom. I changed some things up. I'm kind of excited.
You moved your desk. It felt momentous.
It was.
You sent me a picture.
My desk had been in the same place for the last 9.5 years.
Wow,
so
that is kind of a big change.
This was a big choice.
It's some big changes in the feng shui.
It feels good. I still have some stuff to work out.
I was looking at the pictures and it looked like you could barricade yourself in behind your desk if you needed to escape the pestering student.
That was kind of one of my hopes because the way that my room was set up, I was like too easily accessible. Mm-hmm. They could like get in my space.
Well, they could sneak up behind you. That's the weird part.
So the way that it's set up now, I would have to be basically incapacitated to not know somebody was coming around behind me.
Okay, good.
Which as a teacher in America is always an option. But no, I think I'm happier with it. It's happening.
Okay.
It's August, so it's time.
It is time. All right, should we go ahead and get right into our education news headlines for this episode?
I'm ready.
Okay.
You like spice.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'll let you decide.
No, I know this one and I am spicy as well.
Okay. It's spicy to me, being a book lover, but here's the headline. The largest school district in Texas, Houston ISD, is eliminating its libraries and replacing them with discipline centers.
Okay.
The decision was made... The decision was made by Superintendent Mike Miles as part of his, quote, new education system, end quote, initiative. That's what he's calling it. The new education system.
I love the quotes.
Well, that's what he's calling it.
So now use when you go back and listen to the school to prison pipeline episode.
Yikes. Well, now we're just condensing the pipeline. There is no pipeline now.
Oh, you're right.
Just go directly
it's just a
from
chute.
School. Yeah.
It's like chutes and ladders, but directly to it.
Mike Miles became superintendent of Houston ISD in June 2023 after the Texas Education Agency took over the district due to declining academic performance and financial problems. Miles' appointment is controversial. He has been... He has been criticized by some for his handling of the Dallas ISD system, where during his tenure, a number of scandals and increasing teacher turnover rate were paired with what some perceived to be a hostile relationship with the school board.
Why'd they bring this guy back in for another large city roundup?
He's seen by the state education agency as being kind of a fixer. He's like improved some test scores. He's done some things that can be...
I think we're going to need more than that.
But anyway, back to this story, and that's that librarian and media specialist positions in 28 schools will be eliminated. Miles has said that his top priority is to improve academic performance in Houston ISD. He has said that he wants to make district more transparent and accountable to the community.
Okay.
Miles himself is not accountable to the community, but rather to the state education agency, which is something of a problem for the community. Mm-hmm. He's also rolled out a new teacher pay system that is not being received by everyone equally well. It correlates higher pay with the importance of a particular subject. So, like reading, Miles believes that Houston ISD is falling behind in reading and English, and so he's giving reading and English teachers higher pay as compared to previous plans. Yeah, I thought that you might not feel like that was all that bad.
No, that's not right.
But the thing that's not great is that we decided that, for example, social studies is not that important because who needs to understand history, right?
Yeah, no, I jokingly made that noise, but I truly don't think that's what's right for the school.
I do believe that English teachers and reading teachers should be paid better, but I don't think that it should come at the cost of the salaries of these other folks.
I think all teachers should be paid better, so yeah.
Yeah, so that was another thing that was causing a bit of a stir in the district. My thoughts on this story are just that schools and libraries are basically becoming the chosen battlefields of culture wars in this country, and I think that things are kind of becoming cynical. cynical. And I would hope that we would make every effort to keep that kind of cynicism away from actual children.
Yeah, me too. Yikes.
And depriving kids of library books is just not a good look for a school superintendent, if you ask me. But there you go. There you have it, my 2 cents.
Okay.
All right, next headline.
Number 2. The California Department of Education, CDE, is seeking to prevent Stanford researchers from publishing a study that uses state education data. So the study, which was conducted by Sean Reardon, a professor of education at Stanford, found that California schools are more segregated by race and income than they were 30 years ago. The CDE argues that the study violates the state's student privacy laws, but Reardon and other education experts say that the study is important for understanding the state's education system. So the CDE's move to silence the researchers has been met with criticism from education advocates, who say that it is an attempt to suppress important information about the state schools.
Yeah.
Yikes. This feels bad.
Yeah, it's basically like they have information about students that nobody else has, the state.
And they're preventing it from going where it needs to.
Because it makes them look bad, yes.
Yeah, so they're basically like, no, not that drawer. Close that drawer.
Yep.
Here.
Yep, just kidding. You can't have access to that drawer.
California, you're better. Come on.
So I'm curious to see how this evolves. I hope that we would learn to respond to that kind of study more constructively, maybe.
My quick thought is that we already know.
Yeah, that's my thing, too.
Like, the thing's out.
The thing has been, I don't know.
Put the cat back in the bag.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And then we're going to end on a high note.
My favorite
headline for this week. And that's that NASA has launched a beta website for its new streaming platform, NASA Plus. This is not sponsored by NASA Plus. I'm just a big fan. I like space.
You were like so excited about that. It sounded like we were about to cut to an ad.
It really did. It sounded like a mid-roll ad.
NASA Plus.
NASA Plus. The platform will offer ad-free access to the agency's Emmy Award-winning live coverage, as well as collections of original video series. I put that in there because I thought it was cool that they had won an Emmy. I didn't know.
Yeah.
As well as collections of original video series. NASA Plus is set to launch later this year. The beta website is currently open for public feedback. It can be accessed at beta.nasa.gov.
We're going to totally have that as a platform in our home.
It's going to be playing on at least one screen.
At all times.
Yes.
Well, as I've told many times, when the internet hit, I thought that NASA.gov was one of 5 websites.
You thought that the entire internet consisted of NASA?
I thought it was just basically NASA.
One other thing, maybe.
Because that was the year Jonglen went up to space again. And I thought that it was like...
Did Ask Jeeves exist yet?
I remember Ask Jeeves in 4th grade, but I remember going to NASA.gov in 3rd grade. That's like the first time I ever remember being on the internet. So way to go, NASA Plus, for still being the one true internet website. I feel like when I tell my students that when the internet came to be, I like thought that there were like a handful of websites. That just like doesn't compute for them. I'm like, no, you don't understand it because it's literally so large
because
for you.
It's basically infinite for them.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like I thought that there were 5 buttons and I pushed one of them.
We used to have to pass around URLs to be able to find websites. We would like write down URLs of cool websites that we had found and bring them to school and be like, have you seen this website? Because there were so few URLs that we could find and so few ways to access it. So those of us nerds who were surfing the internet in the really early days, that's how we found things.
I remember being in kindergarten and playing the Oregon Trail. And it was on a computer that was like 2 colors. Like the screen was 2 colors. So like, you know, by 3rd grade, I'd really learned a lot, which was just that NASA was it.
Yeah. NASA is the internet.
Like I said, had the whole thing not been about Jonglen going up into space again that year, I probably would have had a little bit more awareness. But I think because that's what we spent so much time learning about, I was like, well, this is it. This is why we have the internet. So we can go to nasa.gov and see what's, you know, whatever.
It's a good reason to have the internet.
It's my homepage. Did I not tell you that?
No.
Okay.
Good to know.
Let's get into this. Today, we're going to be talking about what the future of education looks like.
Yeah.
One of the questions is, will it even exist?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that means
school,
education, or the world.
All of it, I guess. Well, I think I was asking about whether school as we know it now will continue to exist. And
Oh, that's a good question.
50 years is kind of an interesting timeline because it's like just on the cusp of what could be
very transformative.
A completely new thing, right?
A new frontier.
A new frontier. Yeah, a lot can happen in 50 years.
So we're just going to kind of go through a little bit of research leading into what it could look like. And then also just us kind of talking about our hopes and dreams.
We do have a couple of questions that we've just been wading through them with each other that have prompted this episode. I think one of the first ones is this ongoing thing that we're talking about with the way that technology is impacting the classroom. And we're going to talk about AI a lot, but just the progress of technology and how it tends to progress faster than ethical and political frameworks we have to help us navigate technological change. Like the technology itself far outpaces that. And the same is true in schools. So anyway, we found an article from BBC's Science Focus.
Yeah. So one of the really interesting things that I pulled from this BBC article was that by 2050, around 90% of the world's then 9.8 billion people are expected to have internet. And so virtual classrooms may be more ubiquitous.
Yeah.
So that's like the number that they're anticipating the world will have almost 10 billion people in it by 2050.
And 90% of them will have internet. I threw in a thought about this, and that's that I definitely see internet connectivity continuing to expand. There's no reason for it not to. But I'm wondering if we might get tired of the whole virtual experiment, at least with regard to schooling. I think there's a chance. I think there's a chance that there's going to be a coming backlash against some of the mess that's been created by early social media, especially in schools. And I'm wondering whether we might decide, hey, even though this stuff is cool, maybe it's not good for us. Or at least maybe we won't rely on it quite so heavily. I don't know. It feels to me like we could go either way on those kinds of things.
Yeah, I suppose so.
But definitely the internet will continue to modernize and revolutionize classrooms around the world.
Yeah, so the other thing that this article mentioned was that this is a quote that says, and with more pupils, teachers will have to come to rely on AI automation of certain aspects, like administrative tasks like registration and tracking grades to ensure the best possible service, allowing them to focus on teaching. I think that's a big yes for me. That's a plus. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
In our hopes of the future.
I think the use of AI to increase efficiency of like easily repeatable or reproducible tasks that are kind of just busy work in a day. I think that that's one use of AI that I suppose I'm okay with. I don't really want AI to be writing me poems, but if it can make my administrative tasks in my day go by more quickly, I guess maybe that seems more okay.
I basically just want it to be like my assistant.
Yeah.
I want it to
a virtual
take attendance.
assistant.
I want it to put in grades. I want to be able to say like, hey.
What's the thing that Tony Stark has? That's what I need.
Jarvis.
Yeah, I need a Jarvis. If I can just have a Jarvis.
That's basically what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
Because like if this thing can input grades and take attendance and run report, that would just be so great.
All these ancillary processes to teaching, you know.
I spend a lot of time doing other things. And so some of these could very easily be done by a robot. And I would happily give them up to the robot.
Okay.
Like, why not have it run my attendance reports? And automatically, I could just think of so many things it could do for me. Create me lists of missing work and so many things it could do that I can do too, but it takes forever.
What would you think about an AI chatbot that were designed to be a virtual avatar of you that parents could interact with instead of having to talk to you?
I don't trust her. No.
Then you don't trust her?
No. I barely trust me.
You don't want to upload your consciousness to the cloud and have a virtual assistant copy of you be made to interface with parents, so you don't have to?
I'm gonna say no. This feels like a trap. I'm gonna keep my consciousness to myself.
Okay,
I think that's probably safer. Because I don't want to be like,
you don't want to be part of the Great Link.
Well, here's the thing: is that me as a person already fluctuates wildly between what former Katie and current Katie thinks she can do. So like, I don't need robot Katie being like, oh yeah, teacher will do this in a month. And then teacher is like, I'm not doing that. You know, like, I don't.
What if she would also nag you to get it done for you? If it were something that relied on you?
I don't really need another me.
Okay. All right.
I want like, no. I'm gonna be a firm no. I'm gonna go all the way no on this.
But it's just like a more sophisticated version of a voicemail recording where you can be like, for grade inquiries, press 1.
Okay, well, I know how mad I am when I call an office and that's what I get.
To hear the excuse little Timmy gave us for why he didn't turn in his homework, press 2.
Okay, that would be fun. If it could, like, upload information about their kid that they could call in and be like, oh, well, Timmy said he didn't turn in his homework because his whatever.
I mean,
that would be really funny.
It sounds silly, but it's not really that far from possibility.
I think I would still like to be the one having the conversation with parents. But I suppose if she, like, just ran, like, an FAQ, that would be fine.
Here's my deal. Every moment you spend talking to a parent in your day is a moment you're not spending doing something directly related to the education of the student. And while it's sometimes necessary to loop parents into things, I feel like from what you say to me, there's a lot of time in your day spent managing stuff that does not directly impact the student, but just sort of puts the student's parent at ease about the student somehow. And that's the kind of stuff that I feel teachers should not be having to spend so much time on.
I'm fine with that. That part I could handle.
Okay.
I just really don't trust her otherwise.
Yeah.
I've seen too many movies where they're
You watched Smart House when you were a kid?
Yeah, I think Smart House is what made me afraid of the future. Clips of that movie are like flashing into my head right now. That was a really cool house.
Kind of scared me as a kid, that movie.
I'm not surprised by that. But
it's
now,
a movie about an automated smart house, but there's like an AI woman who kind of...
But the thing that I remember about that house is that they were frustrated by its stupidity, and that's how I feel in my own home. So I think it's universal. I think they knew what was coming. Anyways, all of this to say, I'm going to keep my consciousness to myself. If AI Katie wanted to take phone calls, I could support her on that.
Okay.
But I still feel like I would be doing some of it eventually.
Probably.
So I'm not sure.
But the idea is just to 10x your productivity. To
Sure.
use some gross Silicon Valley terminology.
I definitely want to keep my consciousness. I don't want to upload that anywhere.
Okay.
Because I don't want somebody else knowing.
You don't want to join the
happening.
collective.
No, I'll keep
Resistance is not futile.
I'm going to keep it, at least for now.
Okay. All right. We're going to talk.
That might be the first time that question's ever been asked to me. And I don't even know what I like, if some company came in and was like, our PD today is about uploading your, I would be like, oh my gosh.
Our PD today is about joining the great consciousness in the cloud.
Like, that's what I'm trying to imagine. Like, I'm trying to imagine, like, the handout. It's like a PowerPoint, printed out with, like, the note slot beside it. Like,
from some woman who read 10 articles about it in preparation for the PowerPoint presentation. Yikes. Anyway, okay, this last point, they mentioned that VR and AR might be sufficiently advanced by that point that we could create really immersive and interactive learning environments digitally, virtually. We could even maybe link up people's virtual digital presences somehow with their real world selves. I don't know.
Is that like an avatar when they touch their ponytails?
Yeah. Yes, it is. We're talking about touching our avatar ponytails. So, yeah. In addition to the technological aspect, there's another thing that's kind of driving these questions for us, and that's an evolving conversation around climate change. And you wouldn't think that that would necessarily impact education directly in this time frame, but this summer is shattering heat records around the world. We have a Scientific American article in the show notes. There's a bunch of info in it about all these statistics that are happening in real time. There's a crisis of climate and science communication and literacy going on in broad daylight, and a lot of people are kind of too overwhelmed to respond right now.
Right.
But the climate is already impacting our school systems. We have extreme heat and cold, which can be deadly, both of those things. And those things can regularly close schools, particularly in under-resourced districts. So it's basically all that to say that we don't really realize how far the impacts of climate change are going to reach until it's kind of too late and already happening. But our education system is definitely going to have to grapple with this stuff within the next 50 years, for sure. We're going to have a harsh new reality. And I think it remains to be seen whether we're going to embrace all of these green technologies and consumer policies that might go toward, net zero carbon emissions and things like that. I see world governments currently kind of just pretending like those things don't exist, despite the fact that they've signed pledges to the contrary. So I get kind of worried about it, but I think our schools
rightfully so.
Anyway.
Well, the other thing that comes up a lot is the use of green technology. That was the one thing that was included in the article. Green technologies are basically technologies that help to undo the issues we've created, sort of. From that same article from the BBC, it included like There'll be recycling everywhere. There won't be any single-use plastics. They'll have vertical farms for teaching and supporting communities. All schoolrooms will have air conditioners and purifiers, and recycling actually does work and is available for everyone because recycling basically is a privilege right now in America. So yeah, again, dream world, what could it be like?
Yep. And then just a couple of thoughts. COVID definitely did something to us on a grand scale, and its impact is going to keep stretching on for quite a while, and probably within the 50-year time frame, we're going to be having to grapple with this stuff. But we were already seeing some trends that were a little bit concerning, at least here in the U.S. pre-COVID. But post-COVID, student behavior from every teacher that I talk to and what I'm reading, behavior is becoming a problem. Like more and more of a problem, and just kind of like it's becoming more and more clear that these kids' needs are not being met in a variety of ways. And the behavior issues are ramping up in response to that. It makes sense. It's sad. Everybody has to deal with it. But as a result of that, we got teacher shortages becoming more and more acute. And back to the COVID thing, we're even just now coming to understand the longer term neurological impacts of COVID, how it impacts learning and development and all of these things. And we have a long way to go in figuring all of that out. And it's going to keep
It's a very
shaping.
long road still.
Yeah. There's a lot of undiscovered, a lot of question marks there. And then just more of what I was saying earlier about how cynicism of modern political landscape is leaking into schools and libraries. It's been another reason that I've wanted to sort of stop and look to the future, because what's going on now is so distracting sometimes that I think we're losing track of the grander picture.
For sure.
So anyway, you and I did some notes and a little bit of research about what we would like to see. Would you like to kick us off and talk about what you would like to see in the classroom in 50 years?
I would love to. Well, one, less paperwork, time doing attendance and other paperwork and stuff like that. Like, it would be nice to have the technology to help with 504s and IEPs and that kind of thing. So it's less work in the daily.
You could even make a subtle incremental improvement there if you did something like use transcription software. Do you think you would have an easier time writing up notes if you could just dictate them? Or do you like to write? I'm wondering if the typing and the writing, or I don't know if you write them by hand or if they get typed or what.
Like for an IEP or 504?
Yeah.
They're typed.
They're typed.
Yeah.
That's an improvement over
they have forms.
How it was when we were in school.
They have forms you have to fill out online.
Back in my day.
Like
okay.
PDFs, basically.
Well, that's not that bad then, but... what part of that process?
Well, don't say that. It's a lot of time.
Oh, no, I just meant at least you don't have to, manage a photocopy of something.
No, but they take a lot of time and effort. If you're doing, response to intervention forms or something like that, it's a lot of work.
Right. Well, that's what I'm about to ask is, what part of that process could be sped up or automated, I guess?
If a bot of some kind could come up with the types of learning opportunities that kids have, it could write in this thing for me that we do. Student-led, teacher-led, all of those things. Or how we gather data. If it was gathering the data, then it could share on the form how I gathered data. That kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Do you think it could tell you things that you're, help you see patterns that you're not
Absolutely.
seeing? Yeah.
I would love for that.
That's why I think it gets interesting, is that there's a possibility for AI to notice patterns in learning or development that, this kid's an outlier for some reason.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have had any way to know because I can't crunch the data like this thing can.
So yeah, having something that could help me with intervention forms or pulling data that help me see, changes in students over time, or maybe it could look at writing based on standards and talk about which standards have been directly referenced or supported in the writing, or if it could identify what kind of learning had happened based on their writing, which would be interesting, I think.
Gotcha.
Okay, what about you?
Well, my first one was that I really hope the funding model for public education changes, and this is very much a U.S. specific problem right now, so our listeners around the world, I'm sorry to bore you with this detail, but we have a pretty messed up way of funding our schools. And it's not an easy problem to solve. I'm not sure that I would have the best idea of how to solve these problems, but I do know that currently things are not working very well.
We don't know what does work, but we know what doesn't.
Right.
And that's where we'll start.
So we've talked about the funding model before a bit, but basically 8% of school funding comes from federal dollars. I just wanted a comparison, and I looked it up, and the U.S. spends about 10 times more on the military than it does on education, which...
I'm actually surprised it's not more than that.
I know I'm kind of comparing apples to oranges in thinking about what the military does and in thinking about what the education does. But if I were going about from 10,000 feet up, just looking at it and saying, my budget reflects my priorities. I guess I'm just wondering if we really think it's 10 times more important, why do we think that? And is that belief justifiable? That's what I would think. That's what I would wonder. Anyway, and then state funding models are also undergoing experimentation. Ours just changed not that long ago. We changed the way at the state level school funding is distributed. And then local funding is usually based on property taxes and makes up for the gaps. And that's where things can go really south because wealthier districts obviously have deeper coffers from which to pull, and things get really
iffy,
imbalanced. And then we also have things like charter schools competing with public schools for a slice of limited education dollars. And yeah, anyway, I just hope all of that gets replaced with
no pressure,
some better thing that I'm not responsible for inventing.
Yeah, that's your homework, not mine.
Back to you. What's your next thing?
The next one is for AI support in creating the yearbook. So I could input data, names, stats, photos, and it would be wise enough to create written info and or help with layouts. Or I could tell it to make a page based on a theme, and it could pull photos that fit the theme.
I don't think this is a 50 years from now thing. I think this is a 2 years from now thing.
Yeah, I think it's much closer, but I was just thinking of future hopes. My hope for 50 years is that there is no sad teacher like me making the yearbook, and that it can be basically automated all the way.
Yeah, I mean, there's something I like about the human touch, but I get what you're saying in terms of...
But what if it gets so good you can't tell it doesn't have the human touch?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Parts of the yearbook could be easily switched over. I mean, I'm not trying to not have a job here, obviously.
You're not trying to automate yourself out of the education system?
No, not yet. I might. I hope in 50 years I'm out, but I think there's still a lot it could do to help me while I make sure it still has the personal touch that people seem to value is all. And I think it could. I mean, there's software to identify people, right? Facebook has it, that kind of thing. So that's all I'm talking about.
I think that kind of stuff is probably on the horizon, though. I think we first need to have some pretty clear conversations about privacy, because in order to recognize faces, you have to basically have data about minors and what they look like.
Well, but the program already does, because our school photos are sent to Jostens and uploaded into the program. So that's not really off of what we already do. No,
I'm not saying it's not, but I wouldn't even necessarily trust the current system to be totally secure in this respect. This is not necessarily a new thing, but it's just you gotta really carefully manage security when you have a database of basically biometric or identifying information somehow. That's all. And I think that as more and more information goes online, we're becoming a little bit less clear about what digital copies of us exist out there in the internet world,
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we need to continue to evolve our conversations around that too. But I agree that these tools are going to be
nice,
be powerful and helpful in at least some applications. So, all
what
right.
you got?
My next one is that I would love to have some sort of idea of standards without standardized testing.
No pressure.
Yeah.
50 years from
somebody else can solve this problem, not me. But I think the testing regime we're in is failing.
I love the approach of this is a big problem, but I'm not going to do the work.
No, I'll do the work. Put me in, coach. I am ready. But I think that the current testing regime we have is failing our kids. I think it's not necessarily a good measure of what we think it is, because we think it's a good measure of student learning, but it's really a measure of a narrow range of skills and knowledge. And these tests don't take into account other things like creativity and critical thinking and problem solving. And everybody loves those buzzwords and talks about how important they are, but they really are. And these tests do not really address them. It's pretty well understood now that they're biased against students from low-income families, students of color, and students with disabilities. In order to prepare for standardized tests, schools often focus on teaching to the test. I don't think you would describe what you do as teaching to the test, but you certainly teach with the test in mind. It looms over you at all times.
Yeah. My hope in my teaching is that I'm setting them up to be successful for the test. But it's not by just doing practice tests over and over and over again, or only focusing on the types of questions that could appear on the test. It's like a more well-rounded hope, you know?
Yeah. That's certainly the hope. I think a lot of teachers expend a lot of energy just, though, still trying to just attend to the basics of what's on the test, because that is what is required of you by your state. As much as teachers want to be like, we really try hard not to, they also at the same time are like, yes, but we also do. So,
well, we want our jobs.
Right.
I mean, for the most part.
Right. It's attention. It's attention, and it comes with a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
We use these things to make really high stakes decisions about kids, and it can bring plenty of anxiety, obviously, when that is the case, because somebody's future can be determined by basically a single test score. And I think there are alternatives out there, like portfolios, performance-based assessments, formative assessments, all of these ways of measuring buzzwords. But I have heard people make really impassioned arguments for standardized testing, because they insist that it's important to make sure we have some way of knowing that every kid has a chance for a good education. And I agree that that's important. But I think the questions of like, good in what way? Or good for whom?
That's
or
a big question.
Will it still be good tomorrow? Are we just making it good for today? Like, those are the things that standardized tests do not ask right now. Anyway. Yeah, that's mine.
Okay, my next one is, I think it'd be cool if my students and I could all put on our VR headsets or close our brains and close our eyes and our brains take us there because we're all hooked up.
Because you have the chip implanted or whatever.
Because I have 5G. I think it'd be great if it threw us all right onto the middle of the Senate floor right as Caesar was about to get stabbed.
Oh.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That is a particularly
like,
traumatic moment in history.
If, you know...
What if we could recreate history's most fascinating scenes? Is that what you're saying?
No.
What if we could expose our students to bloody murder?
Less of that.
Does it come with realistic blood-spurting sensations?
If we're considering what can happen in the future, then why can't we time travel to see it?
You can have haptic feedback of the stabbing.
Wouldn't that be cool?
It would be something.
Okay.
But I like the general idea of...
it could be a lot of things. It doesn't have to be the Senate floor when Caesar got stabbed.
Okay.
It could be... Everything I think of is just trauma. This is the most English
Every
teacher
historical event that you've
Everything
been
I teach about.
Yeah.
Okay, like imagine
No, don't go there.
I was going to like Edgar Allan Poe, and then I was like, well, that's all bad. And then
you can be inside the coffin.
I was thinking of the guy.
You can be underneath the floorboards.
In the Telltale Heart.
Yeah.
But you know,
I'm
also thinking like how cool it would be if you're teaching the JFK very famous speech. It doesn't have to be something traumatic. It just so happens that as an English teacher, that's my favorite.
But you think the immediacy that could be provided by a realistic recreation is something that has educational value?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. Because why not hear it from that person in their voice and whatever?
I like the idea of live theater and music performances too.
I think that would be cool.
You could put a kid in an audience of a show of their favorite artist, and it could be like a room where the artist is on the stage and that kid is like the only person in the room with a private concert by that artist, but everybody could be doing it at the same time and experiencing it as if it were a concert just for them.
So if that was the option, I would stop teaching and I would just sit in a VR headset all day.
I know. That's what I'm trying to get at, is this tension between... The more and more interesting and engaging that technology gets, the less and less we're going to
want to be in the real world.
That's my worry.
Yeah.
That's my worry.
Yeah, I just think it'd be much more impactful for them to hear it from the person who wrote it or said it, rather than me being like, well, they said this. You know, I just think of all these cool ways it could be used. I always go to the past because I feel like that's where I have the hardest time getting them to meet me.
Because the past feels less real.
Yeah. And experiencing it in like a more natural way than like us just reading it or listening to an audiobook. You know what I mean? Like that's where my kids miss a lot. My kids don't have the opportunity to go see art and theater, and I teach a lot of those things, or I teach public speeches, you know, and so those would be cool opportunities to be able to be in, which would be neat.
I wonder, do you think it would ever have the effect of being like underwhelming? If they went back, I don't know. I wonder if
that was it?
Well, yeah. Are they so desensitized?
Like they're on the grassy knoll and they were like, that was it? We came here for this?
Right. Does our media now, do our IMAX movies to our whatevers, does it so desensitize us that if we were to just see the real event, it would be like, oh, okay.
Shakespeare
or would
roll.
we have to make it like a movie? You know, would we have
Yeah.
to make it a cinematic experience?
Yeah. Maybe going to a show, right? Seeing a live production. Maybe that would be a bit more beneficial, because I could totally see my kids being like, so they just stabbed him and he's dead. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, that's it. And so you're probably
They're like-
right. I think that there's like a middle ground somewhere that is not underwhelming, but still impactful. I think is what I'm going for. Yeah. Although it would be awesome if we got thrown into the
You want to
floor.
send them all directly to the dark and murderous moments of history.
Well, every single meme I get sent from former students is like, an English teacher is like, I'm going to have you read the most insane thing you've ever read at 8 a.m. before you've had a honey bun for
Yeah.
breakfast. And then you're going to be thinking about it for the rest of your life.
Like the Oedipus stories and stuff.
And
Yeah.
Oh, imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine
No,
if
I
we
really
were
don't
with
want
him
to.
with the riddle
I would rather not, though.
at the Sphinx. That would be cool. English teachers have a unique opportunity, because there are still things I read that I'm like, wow, I haven't thought about that teacher in so long. Do you remember that thing we read? And that's what I take great pride in.
You still went to the dark and spooky places.
It's what I do. It's what I teach.
do. I can't help it. Okay.
I throw you under the floorboard with a dead man.
Yeah.
And you all knock together.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What do you have?
My next one is that we need to hit the reset button on the notion of preparing for the future. This sounds really dark, but I promise it's not.
But actually, it fits so perfectly with me running off the rails with all of my ideas. You're like, actually, let's bring it back in. Maybe
not.
we shouldn't be exploring the option to send 30 15-year-olds to the Senate floor
Here,
with Caesar.
Here's what I mean. I don't think we can prepare for the future. I think we can shape the future through education. I think we have become too enamored of the idea that there is preparation that we can reasonably do for what is coming down the pike with regard to like technological innovation and stuff.
This feels like an attack. I just want you to know. You put this directly after that because you knew I was going to run off the rails.
No. I like
You
your
were like,
VR.
actually...
I am talking about this idea that we can prepare people to be the job holders of tomorrow, basically. And that's not to say that we can't equip students to do well as job holders, but treating that like it's the only problem of human life is an issue. And then again, just like assuming that what we could teach now that is subject specific or job relevant information, the assumption that that's going to be relevant when students actually go and become job holders is a bit of a stretch a lot of times. So I think that teachers sometimes are willing to take the back seat of trying to prepare. I mean, not willing exactly. They're caught up in a system that demands this of them. Because again, that's like what standardized testing is all about. That is not about shaping the future.
Right.
I think we need to start preparing people to be the leaders of the future and to be those who think about the most pressing problems of the future. Because technology is being treated as something that's like happening to us right now. And I think it's a job of education to help us understand that and to help us adapt. And I think that right now we're in this spot where we're not necessarily doing a good job of communicating how human beings create all of this technology and human beings and human decisions shape their impact. Yeah. Anyway, the detrimental impact of this stuff, like Facebook arguing with its own researchers about the negative impact of Instagram on teens' mental health. That's a thing that happened a couple of years ago. Yeah. All of these kinds of things. They're all human choices, and we need ethicists to work on these problems, not just technologists. We need philosophers and political theorists and community activists, and that is what it means to prepare for the future, is to equip those people, not just people who can code.
Yeah.
And I say this as a person
who
code. Codes. Preparing needs to look different from what it looks like now.
I like that.
Yep. Back to you.
My next one is kind of a piggyback, but it's just the opportunity to have help with grading and editing based on reliable options of AI or, whatever technology comes our way. It would be great for my composition students, for example, to be able to submit rough draft with citations and sources and things like that over and over and over again to something that can see the progression, that can learn that student's written voice, right? That can do some of that guiding that becomes harder and harder for me when I have more and more students in the classroom. And then at the end, you know, it could generate for me every version of it so that I could kind of see along the way where it came from, what it did. I don't want it to do grading for me, but it's certainly an option for it to catch commas and grammatical errors or spelling, you know, like it could create that for me, and then that would leave the bulk of the voice and everything else for me to spend more time with.
Just like more automation of mundane tasks of your
and it's just the tasks that shouldn't be taking all my time, but
I guess
do.
I would say that this was not on my list, but I would hope for you that you would not keep having an increasingly large class sizes. I want you to have fewer students 50 years from now.
Right. Yeah, I think that's important, but we need teachers, and we don't have a lot of those right now.
No. But that's what so it actually kind of leads into my next thing, and this is not necessarily a hope, but a question. And I'm wondering if we're going to keep the same sorts of structures that we have now around segmenting kids. So like by age, by grade, by subject, by track, by college boundness or not, or GPA or whatever. For a couple of different reasons, I wonder if that's going to be kind of something we evolve away from. And I'm hoping that with some of these resources, class sizes can return to being way more reasonable, and that teachers have way more opportunity for customized one-on-one interaction with students and all kinds of stuff that's really important to their development. We're in the midst of a crisis of loneliness, and I wonder whether that, especially in these post-COVID years, might inform the way we structure schools and classrooms. I almost wonder if we won't go back to something like a one-room schoolhouse approach where we mix a lot of ages together.
Maria Montessori.
Yeah, there are definitely benefits to that kind of learning in a lot of contexts. And so again, that's not really necessarily like I wish it would be this way, but I just wonder how new research and new technology is going to change our thinking about how we should structure schools.
I don't know why that wouldn't work, right? Become more community-based, which is basically what those schools were at their hearts, right? Like, one-room schoolhouses were the hub.
But
so I like that.
Yeah, but it definitely requires, like you're saying, a lot of support around restructuring, you know, how many students you have in a day and what you spend your time doing, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, okay, back to you.
Okay, another one for me, the opportunity to have more access for people, whatever that access looks like. If it's internet, if it's devices. And I also mean more access in terms of, as I was talking about, my kids, geographically speaking, are limited. So I would just love to see the technology develop in a way that allows everyone to benefit from it. I was joking with Chelsea when we started this episode about the Jetsons. But, like, I don't remember in the Jetsons there being, like, that one family who didn't have the stuff, right? There wasn't, like, some poor family on a rock somewhere that, like, didn't get to, like, be with the, you know what I mean?
Everybody had an apartment in the sky. Or
whatever. So, like, I guess that's what I'm looking for. I wish my kids had the same access to things that other students do. And I don't know what that would look like in 50 years. It could be a million things, of course. And so my hope is that technology is kind of like the great equalizer that allows students.
That's certainly the hope. There's not much going for it right now that suggests that it'll
I'm feeling less hopeful.
Yeah I don't mean to be a real bummer, but I guess the reason of bringing it up is just to say that that's my hope too. Like, I am fundamentally, even though I sound so grumpy, I am fundamentally optimistic, but it's going to require that we grapple with this stuff aggressively. Kind
of a dream, but
all right, my last one was just that I want an education system that's more comfortable with and reliant upon questions as opposed to answers.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. I think we've attended less to the problem of helping people know how to ask good questions than we have to the problem of preparing people with good answers. And I think that might be a many-headed hydra of problems that goes out into all directions. I think that asking good questions is being able to do that. That's the skill.
Yeah, I was going to say that's actually more important than getting an answer.
That's the skill for the future, especially if with all this technology. But asking good questions, we haven't really privileged that. We've privileged knowing the right answer or whatever we think the right answer is at the moment. And
that's what we grade.
Right. And that's not great. That's not great for the future of critical thinking. It's not great for the future of making sure we're equipped to regulate all this technology so that it doesn't eat us alive and cause us to eat each other alive. I think that the zombie apocalypse is coming unless we fix this problem. That's my final thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. And how about you?
Woo. Okay. My last one. So to go with the maybe potential zombie apocalypse, my hope for 50 years from now is that there are more snow days because we have saved the earth.
Yeah. We're back to having snow days.
I hope that there are more of them because we have undone what we've done. So me joking about wanting more snow days is actually a bigger plea to save the earth.
Save the planet, please.
Yeah, I think that's really where I'm going with that. But there's something so romantic and perfect about being a kid and getting a snow day. And I feel bad for kids that don't get that call.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel bad for those teachers that don't get that call because we need that damn call. You know, we just need the call sometimes. So it was kind of a joke because of snow days, but I really do hope that we maybe put big oil and things like that actually to task for what they've done.
Yeah, I hope that it's not too late to confront this.
That's like my fear.
I
don't want to know where the doomsday clock is right now because it will only upset me.
Yeah. I hope that, and I do think it is in a lot of ways a problem of education. And I don't mean that in a simple way of like, oh, if only more people knew about this problem. I don't mean it like that. But I think that the whole way that we consume scientific information and consume media, I think all of that, the education system of the future of 50 years from now needs to confront. And definitely the dysfunction that this planet has with regard to managing climate change is, I think, tied up in some of these problems that we're discussing.
Will we exist in 50 years?
Yeah.
There's the first question.
Yeah. Will we exist in 50 years?
I'm going to look up the doomsday clock just for fun.
Okay.
Oh, this is bad.
Are we 1 minute from midnight?
90 seconds.
90 seconds.
Yeah.
Or 90 seconds from midnight.
That's what the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist says.
Great.
As of January of this year, we got down to 90 seconds to midnight. Not great. We got a lot to do in a minute and a half.
We sure do.
Okay.
This is Fill in the Blank, where we ask you a trivia question. If you know the answer, write into us. hello@16to1.com. We would love to hear from you. Write in with the answer and we'll send you some stickers. Or even if you don't have the answers, we'll send you some stickers. We just love to hear from you. So,
and we have a lot of stickers.
We do have a lot of stickers. Last show's question about John Dewey. One of Dewey's heroes was this famous American writer, author of Leaves of Grass, and a man who enjoyed spending time with his friends while naked. Who is that famous writer? That was Walt Whitman. Yeah.
Way to go, Walt.
Like to hang around in the nude. All right.
And so
this
did
show's
Dewey.
question. Oh gosh. Yeah. They all did. It was just a thing. Don't ask too many questions.
This show's question.
Yes.
So the Barbie movie recently made huge headlines.
We had a fun time seeing it.
Many people know Barbie's real name is Barbara Roberts, but what is Barbie's middle name? Barbie is named for the creators, Ruth Handler's daughter, and Ken is for her son, Kenneth. And another fun fact about Barbie is that she's from the fictional town called Willows, Wisconsin.
Willows, Wisconsin.
So what is Barbara Roberts, Barbie's middle name?
Okay. All right. And what did you learn in this past couple of weeks?
We saw Barbie, which was amazing. We saw Oppenheimer, which was amazing. But I learned about something called golden handcuffs.
Okay.
And it is referring to people who bought a house basically between 2015 and COVID. So these homeowners are stuck with better mortgage rates and their overall mortgage in general, right? Because at the time, the housing market hadn't quite fallen into the chaos that it has now. So these people who bought these homes between 2015 and COVID are now in what's called golden handcuffs because the money that they could make from selling their house is not enough to offset the rising cost of homes.
Right.
So they're stuck in a good place, but normally the hope is that, you upgrade when you sell your house.
Mm-hmm.
And right now that isn't an option for people who bought a home during this time because of the housing crisis. That's no longer an option.
Which in turn contributes to a housing crunch increasing because people aren't moving out of the homes to free them up to become available. Right.
So I was sent a TikTok about golden handcuffs and then I read about it a little bit further and it's a quote unquote good place to be, but it's a bad place to be because you are stuck there.
Right.
What'd you learn?
Ooh, I learned that Overdrive, that's the company that makes our library's ebook app Libby, and Overdrive used to be the name of the app. They were acquired by Rakuten in 2015 for $410 million. I did not know this. And then another acquisition in 2020, KKR acquired Overdrive from Rakuten for an undisclosed amount. And KKR is famous for their involvement in the RJR Nabisco buyout, which was one of the most famous leveraged buyouts of all time. It was a landmark kind of in the history of corporate finance because it basically was showing a way for a private equity firm like KKR or something like to make a huge profit by financially engineering a doomsday scenario for a company. So
by buying,
they're famous for being corporate raiders. So that's the terminology that's used. They go in and sell businesses for parts to make profits for shareholders.
Yeah.
It's not my phrase, but that's what.
No, I just mean that actually helped me understand it.
Yeah,
to hear it called that.
So there are a number of negative consequences of that buyout, including loading of RJR Nabisco with a ton of debt and then a subsequent layoff of thousands of employees of RJR Nabisco. So anyway, they're the company that now owns that app that we use to get our library books, which means that they have all of the control of digital publishing for libraries and academic institutions in the country because Overdrive basically has a monopoly.
No, I'm sad.
So I'm looking for the coming in-ification of Libby.
No, I hope not. I love Libby.
The functionality that it provides is good, but I think that structurally and market-wise, it's bad when these monopolies exist. And publishers we've talked about this too on the show before, but publishers are demanding exorbitant rates for these ebook titles. They're making libraries pay out the nose for them. So I think some competition in this space would be good. And I'm concerned because there isn't much at the moment. But that's what I learned about the buyout.
Interesting.
Yep. All right. I think that about wraps it up for the week. Do you have any parting thoughts?
No, just enjoy what remains of summer.
All right. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening. Listeners, thanks for supporting 16 to 1. We're your co-hosts. I'm Chelsea Adams.
And I'm Katie Day. Find our show notes, archives, and resources, sign up for our newsletter, or get in touch with us via the contact form at 16to1.com, all spelled out.
We are so grateful for our listener support. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to the show and telling your friends or colleagues about it.
The show is edited and produced by you, Chelsea Adams, and you're also responsible for our show's music.
And you, Katie Day, serve as lead researcher and social media manager.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next show. You like that?
You just want to take people to the trauma place.